Hello everybody. Quick review of some basic vocabulary as well as the practical issues of how do you actually write a method and then test it. So let's write an example method where I'm going to calculate a special kind of mean called a geometric mean. And the math part isn't really important. But the geometric mean is where you have two numbers and you multiply them together and take the square root. So let's do it first without a method. If I do this is called declaring variables. What it means is I'm letting the computer know that I want to allocate memory to hold two integers, and I'm naming them A and B. I haven't actually assigned them values. By default, these variables will contain the values 0. But separately, if I wanted to, I could assign them values. So the vocabulary here is declaring versus assigning, or you could also call this initializing. You can also do it, there's a lot of ways that you can do this same thing. I could do this, A equals 3 and B equals 5. Or I could do this, B equals 5, on the same line separated by commas. So just be aware that there are multiple ways you can do that, and you'll see programmers, doing all the different possibilities. Okay, so I don't want to work with integers, I want to work with doubles. So I'm going to make these double. I said that I wanted to multiply the numbers together and take the square root. So you could do this, and I do not recommend that you do this. So math.square root val. So here I'm doing each step of the calculation on its own line. Ordinarily, there's no reason to do that. You should just do it all on a single line. So math.square root A times B. If you didn't know math.square root was a thing, then check the reference document. It's just a reminder of all the various things that the math library can do. Okay, and instead of calling this val, that's not a terribly descriptive name, so I'm going to call this answer. And then you can display answer. So you can run it and make sure it works. And here we haven't actually written any methods. We're just doing the calculation. Most of the time when you're programming, you want to create methods that will do some calculation or some process for you. So rather than having math.square root times AB here, I'm going to define my own method like we did in the last video when I was programming by intention. So I'm going to call this calculate geometric mean. And I know it takes two inputs, A and B. So notice it's in red here, which is a compile time error, because I haven't actually declared this method. So you could go outside your main and start typing public static like this. But in the last video, I showed you that there's a shortcut. You can hit Alt-Enter and say create the method. And now we're creating it. And it just wants to double check that all of the things that it's guessing about are correct. So here it's saying, are we sure we want to return a double as the return type? And the answer is yes, so I just hit enter. Do we really want the two inputs to be doubles? And the answer is yes. You don't have to name the input variable the same thing as the variable up here. This input variable is called a parameter. So these are the parameters to the method. These values that we're giving it up here are called arguments. So parameter is an input variable. An argument is the value that you're going to assign to the parameter. So here the arguments up here are A, B. I'm going to call the parameters v1 and v2. So the arguments are the values, A, B. The parameters are v1, v2. And so if you wanted to, you could say something like this, double answer equals math square root v1 times v2. So this is doing the same thing I was doing before. I'm taking my two input variables, I'm multiplying them together, and then returning the square root. I'm not returning it yet. So then return answer. So you could do this. It's a little bit silly to define a variable if you're just going to immediately return it. So I probably wouldn't define my own variable there. I would just say return, and then this is the value that I'm returning. All right, so now I've got this nice method to calculate the geometric mean. Notice that I have my values that I pass in as inputs. This thing calculates the results, which gets stored inside answer, and then I print answer. Usually when you're writing methods, you don't have code to get user input inside your method, and you don't print things inside your method. You return the value, and then you print the answer from the part of the code where you ran the method from in the first place. So later on in this problem set, you're going to need to write code where you use either scanner or JOption pane to ask the user for numbers. You do a calculation with them, and then you display the result. So if you were going to do something like that, instead of initializing A and B up here, I would just declare them, and then you could do something like as I showed you in the notes for how you get user input. So here I've just done that really quickly. I'm defining a scanner object called input, and I say type a number, and then I run a method on my scanner object called next double, which will sit and wait for the user to type a double and then hit enter, and then I'm saving that inside my A variable. Same thing for the B variable, and now I can do A and B. But what I'm saying is what you wouldn't want to do is you wouldn't want to drop all this code here inside your method like this, and then assign V1 and V2 this way. So don't do that. Get all your user input inside main. Then once you've got your inputs, pass those arguments as inputs into your method, and then once you have your answer, you display it at the end. Okay, I hope this is good. If you're freaking out like I don't remember scanner, don't worry. It's there in the notes document. Just check out the notes document. You should use it like a reference, because I know you've seen all this before, and I also know that it's been a long time. So remind yourself what it looks like. Feel free to copy the patterns directly from that document, but use them for your own purposes. Good luck.